Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. I'm really excited that you guys are here for another episode. Now in this episode, we're gonna continue our journey with the cloud. And specifically in this video, we're gonna focus on GCP. But before we do that, a quick PSA. Now I've been getting a lot of emails and a lot of messages from recruiters asking me about opportunities that they want to discuss with me in either engineering or technology. And while I love it and it's really great that you all are reaching out to me, the best way that you can reach me is by clicking the link in the description below. In the link, you'll have access to my most up-to-date calendar. You'll have the opportunity to book a session either through a Zoom call or through a phone call, and you can sit with me and talk to me about your latest opportunity. It's a great way for you to get in touch with me instead of getting lost through the noise of all the emails that I get, or also as well all the messages that I get through social media platforms. With that PSA out of the way, let's continue our journey into the cloud. Now I know I keep talking about the cloud, and especially in this technology series, but it's very, very crucial to understand how important it is to embrace the cloud. And I'm gonna link a video for you all, and it was a video that I did about why we're moving to the cloud and how important the cloud is. But also as well too, today's video, we actually did this in another cloud provider, specifically AWS. It's all about creating a virtual server. Specifically, we're gonna use Redhat Enterprise Linux in order to run on this server. So I'm gonna link the video as well for you to catch up on how to create a virtual server running Redhat Enterprise Linux in AWS. In AWS world, that's called an EC2 instance. So go ahead and check out that video if you're interested in the AWS side. But if you're interested in how to do it in the GCP world or Google Cloud platforms, you've come to the right video. So stay tuned as we dive into the details of how we create the virtual server running Redhat Enterprise Linux and specifically in Google Cloud platform. So welcome to my desktop, where we're gonna learn how to create our first server using GCP or Google Cloud platform. And if you've been watching my channel, there's already a video that I created on making our first EC2 instance, which is the equivalent over at AWS. And one of the reasons why I think we're going to be showing multiple cloud providers is that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. What do I mean? So if we take a look at this article that I have here, so this article was from November 26th of 2020. I don't know if you all remember, but back some time ago, and it wasn't that long ago, it feels like yesterday, there was a huge AWS outage, pretty much rendering iRobots, right? So if you're very familiar with iRobot and their vacuums, they're very, very popular, the Roomba vacuums. And so these Roomba vacuums are connected through an app, and these applications that you use on your phones to tell the robot to go vacuum, they no longer were working due to the outage that we had with AWS. And as you can see in this article as well, is that it was a widespread problem. You couldn't schedule your cleaning. And not only did it affect vacuums, but it also affected doorbells and a lot of other services that run off of AWS. So with that aside, right, the biggest thing is let's be cloud agnostic, be able to provision multiple resources over many different cloud providers. And the two that we're going to focus on mostly is going to be GCP and AWS. So if you haven't seen how we do this in AWS, I'm going to put a link in the description below where you can actually go and follow that video and learn how to make your first virtual server, or as we call it in AWS, EC2 instance, and you can go ahead and set that up there. With that out of the way, let's jump into GCP and create our first virtual server. So here we are on the Google Cloud page, and the biggest thing is we need to have access to our console in order to create a virtual server. And one of the operating systems that we're going to use with this virtual server is Rhel, or Redhat Enterprise Linux. And so I'm going to walk you guys through on how to create that. So first things first, right, you have to have a GCP account. So make sure you go ahead and log in. I'm already logged in. So let's go ahead and go to the console. So now that we're in the GCP console, first thing we need to do is we need to create a project in order to be able to assign any computing resources to that project. So here in the top where it says select a project, we're going to click on this, and then we're going to click on new project. So I call this project my first Rhel server. I'm not going to attach it to any organizations, so I'm going to just leave that as is for no organization and then hit create. So now that we've created our project, let's go into the dashboard and see where that project is. So I'm going to go ahead and click the navigation button or the navigation menu. I'm going to go under Cloud Overview, and I'm going to go to the dashboard. Now under the dashboard, it wants me to either create a project or select an existing project. we actually just created a project. So let's go and click the drop down, and we're going to select my first Rhel server, which is the project that we just created. And we're going to click on that and hit open. So now that we're at the dashboard for my first Rhel server project, we're going to add a compute engine to it. So under resources, I'm going to click on compute engine. And once you get to this page, we're just going to enable the compute engine API. So once you're done activating the API, it should automatically redirect you to the compute engine page that you're seeing here. And if it doesn't take you there, one of the things that you can do is go under the navigation menu, then click on Compute Engine. And once you're under Compute Engine, you can go to VM Instances under Virtual Machines, and you can click that. And it'll take you to the exact same spot that we're in right now. From here, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and create an instance. One of the first things that we do is we give it a name. So I called my instance Rhel-server. And here's the really cool thing. As you start making adjustments to your instance, it actually will tell you what the monthly cost is or hourly cost for the actual instance itself. So under regions, we have low CO2 regions. So if I were to click US East 4 for Northern Virginia, right, I'm at $25.46 per month or 3 cents per hour currently. If I were to click North Virginia, you can see that I went up to $28.65 per month for this particular instance, or 4 cents per hour, which is a little bit higher, right? So make sure that you're picking whatever works best for your situation. Since we're learning how to set up a Rhel server in GCP, I'm not looking to have some major cost, right? I want it to be as cheap as possible. So we're going to go back to the US Central 1 zone. We're going to keep it at US Central 1C. That's fine. Now, under the machine family, since this is general purpose and is for learning purposes, we are going to keep it under E2 for the series. But you can see here that you have the ability to change either for compute optimized or memory optimized. Whatever your workload is, you can actually adjust it. And then under machine type, of course, you can pick whatever it is that you need. I am going to adjust this to E2 small because since we're learning how to set up a Rhel server and it's just for learning purposes, I don't need anything higher performance. 2 gigs should be enough to run Rhel in my case. So the next thing that we can do is we can go under boot disk because all the other settings don't really apply to us right now. So let's go under boot disk and change the boot disk. And here's where we get to pick the operating system. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Rhel because of course we're learning Redhat Enterprise Linux. And then we go ahead and pick the version that we want. I'm going to go with 8. I know 9 is the latest and greatest, but let's go with 8 for now. And then as far as license type, there's 2 options. You can either A, bring in your own license, and you can register your license with this instance, or B, you can pay as you go, meaning, hey, I don't have a license, I'll pay Google. Google has a partnership with Red Hat in order to provide that license to their customers in an instance and put that together for us. And so we pay Google, Google then pays Red Hat. So let's go ahead with the pay-as-you-go option so that way we can get the license through Google. And then for the boot disk type, we're going to do balanced persistent disk. And in a later video, we'll talk a little bit about what the differences are between all these disk types. And we're going to leave 20 gigabytes as the default for the size. So let's go ahead and hit select there. So as you can see here, because I decided to use Red Hat's license through Google, I have to pay Google, which brought up my costs from what you were seeing before, 2 cents hourly. And now I'm at 8 cents hourly. So that's a big jump, right? And of course, that's to cover the license. And now, as far as the identity API access, we're going to leave that as is, as the default. The firewall, we're going to leave that as default. And now we're just basically going to hit create. And we're going to give this a couple of minutes because GCP now is doing the work on the back end in order to create this virtual server running Red Hat Enterprise Linux on there. So now that we see that our Rhel server is already in setup, and we see that because we have this green little check mark over here. And then on top of that too, they also give us the external IP in which we can communicate with this virtual server. Now, how do we connect to this virtual server? Now, GCP under Connect gives us this cool drop-down menu for many different options for SSH, and we can click that. And one of the easiest things that we can do is open SSH in a web browser. and the web browser gives us access to the machine. So let's go ahead and open that. And we can see here that Google automatically transfers the SSH key into the VM for us. It automatically establishes and opens the terminal as you see over here. And just like that, we're in our virtual server that's hosted in GCP, and we're running Red Hat Linux. And how do we know that? We can do a cat on Red Hat release, and we can see here that we're running 8.6. Now here's a question. What if we're running Linux or say Mac OS? How do we connect to our virtual server that's hosted on GCP that we see here is running Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.6? So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. So up on my screen here, we're seeing a Linux distribution called Fedora, and I'm logged into the machine, and this is my local machine that's in my home lab. How do I connect to our virtual server that's hosted on GCP? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my SSH keys. That way I can copy my keys from my local machine over to my virtual server in GCP, so that way it allows a connection between the two. So I'm going to use SSH keygen to generate my keys. SSH keygen. I'm going to do the -T option in order to choose what type of key that I want, and I want RSA. And I'm going to use the -B option, and the -B option allows me to select how many bits do I want to use for this key. So I'm going to go ahead and say 4096. And now it's generating our public and private key pair. So I'm going to leave this as default for our directory in which to save the key to. Now you can use a passphrase here, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to do it without a passphrase. But it's always good practice to use a passphrase. And I want you to enter the same passphrase again, so I'm going to just hit enter. And as you can see here, our key was generated. So now let's head back to our virtual server and bring our key to our virtual server in order to allow us to connect. So now let's head into our .ssh directory. Here we have authorized keys. Let's go ahead and open that up in our text editor. And as you can see here, there's already keys added by Google. And these are the keys that are automatically generated when you actually spin up your instance. So I'm going to go ahead and add a comment here and say added by Lewis, since the other two were added by Google. Now let's head back to our local machine where we just created our public keys, and let's go ahead and view the public key. So we're going to cat the public key, and as we saw, it was under SSH ID _ RSA, and it's the PUB for public. So as we see here, this is our public key. So let's go ahead and grab this entire key, and let's copy it into our text editor here. So as we see here, we were able to copy and paste our key into our text editor for our virtual server. So let's go ahead and save. So now that we transferred our public key from our local machine to our virtual machine that's in the cloud, specifically GCP, we can cat the file in order to make sure that our changes were saved. So as you see here, we're able to see the changes that I made by adding my public key, and also as well the comment that I did added by Lewis. So after we verified that, now we can connect to the machine using the username and the IP address of the virtual machine. And now we're logged into the machine. And we can verify that by taking a look at our Red Hat release, which is the same exact thing that we saw before. So if I were to cat etc Red Hat release, we see here that we're running Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.6. And then if I were to create a file, let's say hello, we can head back into here. Now we can verify that what I did from my local terminal actually was in the virtual server that's hosted on GCP. We can just do an ls, and there we see the file that I touched on my local machine. So welcome back, folks. By now you should have all the knowledge necessary in order to create a virtual server in Google Cloud Platform and have it run Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Really cool what you can do over an internet connection, which wasn't feasible before. Now, I spoke about this in the video, how we want to be cloud agnostic in order to have high availability of our application. So if you found the content to be helpful, don't forget to give me a like, share the video with a friend who's also learning about the cloud as well, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on all the latest that comes from our channel on engineering, technology, and finance. I hope to see you on the next video.